Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Church of Evanston. I'm Andy Fisher, and in addition to being your bell ringer, I'm your worship associate this morning. Whether this is your spiritual home or you are newly discovering this community, we're grateful to share this time together. We strive to be an inclusive and welcoming community, seeking truth in love and nurturing the human spirit for a world made whole. We are guided by our principles and values, which remind us in every moment and through every challenge that each of us is worthy of love and that we are all connected to the vast and beautiful web of existence. We come together to remember our kinship with one another and to hold one another in heart and mind with tenderness and careful attention, and to dedicate ourselves more fully to living our shared values. People of all ages are a welcome and important part of our service community. We are blessed to have the children in the sanctuary for the first half of every service and in the entire service about once a month. The nest in the front is our designated area for families with young children, where we have quiet fidget toys and activities in a kid-friendly order of service. Nursery care is available in room 11 every Sunday. As a part of being a welcoming and inclusive community, we have some information posted on the screen that will help orient you to the UCE and our services. We have a few announcements. Next Sunday at 6 p.m., join the UCE Pagan community for a Samhain celebration here in the sanctuary. The Samhain spiritual dance, ritual, and potluck are accessible and welcoming to those of all ages, identities, and abilities. The Legislative Action Team is ongoing information about the medical aid and dying bill pending in the Illinois Senate and how you can help get it passed. Please see Sally patrons Margaret Shackley and Dennis Wilson at the program tables at the back of the cafe after today's service to learn more. This afternoon, the Legislative Action Team is hosting an ACLU Civics Liberty Town Hall. You are invited to join us in the sanctuary or watch us live stream at 2 p.m. for a conversation with panelists from Lurie Church's Children's Hospital and the Children Abortion Fund and the ACLU of Illinois. And now, let us settle into our shared time of reflection, celebration, and inspiration. As we begin our worship service, those joining us online are invited to gather your chalice as we join in beloved community. Welcome to worship. The Unitarian Church of Evanston resides on land that was recorded as being transferred from the local Potawatomi community to the U.S. government in 1829, shortly before the Potawatomi in this area were forcefully removed west of the Mississippi River. This land was then sold to white settlers. We remember the ancestors of contemporary African Americans, the individuals, families, and networks of Black people who built up our country's culture and economy. The role forced on them originally by enslavement. We acknowledge the imperial violence that landed on North American shores in 1619. It has continued throughout the generations and remains a reality today. These acknowledgments are one small effort toward building long-term solidarity with contemporary communities. We commit ourselves to take what we learn here today and incorporate it into our lives and turn our thoughts into actions. Please join in our words of shared commitment. We name these realities with honor for all these ancestors, respect for our descendants, and gratitude for the land we use as sacred space. The internship community brought the flowers in recognition of Emma's first sermon here at UCE. As they light our chalice, symbol of our living traditions, please join in saying the words on the screen by Sarah Wakoya Davis. We light this chalice with an open heart. We light this chalice with resolve. We light this chalice in hope. We light this chalice with reverence. We light this chalice with all our souls longing to be who we are, become, and be ourselves. Please rise in body or spirit and join in saying the words of our covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Before we sing our opening hymn, I invite those joining us online to greet each other in the chat, and those joining in the sanctuary to turn to one another briefly and to say good morning, trying to greet someone who is new to us. Please stay after the service and continue your conversations. If you are new to UCE, please stop by the welcome table with the red tablecloth at the back of the sanctuary to get more information about our community. Let's keep creating new relationships and building kinship among us. Please remain rising and join in singing our opening hymn, number 34.
Good morning, everyone. What a beautiful fall day. My favorite kind of weather. Today's Time for All Ages is a book called Little Tree by Lauren Long. Yeah. Once there was a little tree filled with little leaves, who was surrounded by other little trees who had little leaves of their own. In the heat of long summer days, Little Tree's leaves kept him cool. The squirrels would climb up on his branches to play. The mourning dove landed in him and sang her fluty song. The little tree was sure to grow up big and strong. Autumn arrived, and cool winds filled the air. The wind tickled the little tree as it passed through its branches and ruffled his leaves. The air grew cold, and the leaves on all the trees changed color, becoming yellow, red, and orange. Then, one by one, the trees began to drop their leaves, but not Little Tree. He just hugged his leaves tight. "Hello, Little Tree," said the squirrel. "You're supposed to drop your leaves now." But Little Tree was unsure. What would he do without his leaves? Winter came. "What are you doing with leaves still on you?" asked the doe. Little Tree just hugged his leaves tight. Springtime arrived, and the little forest burst into life again. The other trees grew bright new leaves. The squirrels played in their branches. Little Tree could hear the mourning dove singing her fluty song. The seasons continued to come and go. "Little Tree," quacked a duckling, "your leaves are brown. Are you feeling sick?" A fox said, "Little Tree, it's autumn. It's time for you to drop your leaves. You can do it. Ready? 1, 2. But Little Tree just hugged his leaves tight. All around the forest grew and grew. One summer, Little Tree could no longer feel the sunlight. The squirrels played high above on the broad, tall trees, and the morning dove sang so far away that he could hardly hear her fluty song. Autumn came again. Leaves began to blanket the ground. Little Tree looked up at the other trees, at their branches reaching high into the sky. He remembered when the trees had all been his size, and then he let go. As its last leaf fell to the ground, for the first time, Little Tree felt the harsh cold of winter. But in time, something happened. Once there was a little tree.
Good morning. I invite us into a time of quiet reflection as we share our joys and sorrows. If you have a joy or a sorrow you would like spoken aloud, you may write it in the book at the back of the sanctuary. You may submit it through the Google form found on our homepage of our website, or you may email one of the ministers, including me. We listen to these offerings with tenderness and with respect. Let us all quiet our bodies and voices during the sacred time by breathing in together and breathing out. The first joy, Liz Kennedy shares the joy that Lindsay and Rick welcomed their third baby to the world yesterday. Cleopatra, Elizabeth, Angel, or Cleo. We share your joy with you all. And we have two that were missed from last week with apologies that we will read this week. Two joys from Sarah Devaney. I'm happy that my Aunt Carmen and cousin Marnie are here for a visit. We're here. Carmen was visiting from Arizona and Marnie from Wisconsin. And they had a great experience, the previous Saturday, seeing the play Inherit the Wind with some of the members from the Plays the Thing group at church. And also from last week, Peter Silverman shares that his daughter Alyssa will be having surgery on October 22nd. And we send our love and support to Alyssa. And from the book, we have one joy, a mixed joy. Thanks to UCE for building up our spirits when the world seems crazy and cruel. Gratitude for my Sunday morning pick-me-up. And that's from Kristen Lems. And finally, a sorrow. Remember, 16 shots in 15 seconds, 10 years ago today. Chicago officer Jason Van Dyke killed 17-year-old Laquan McDonald. Remember. Sharing these concerns of the heart is part of the practice of beloved community. Together we expand our celebrations and lessen the burdens of our grief. You're invited to light a candle at one of the 3 stations at the sides or the front for the joys or sorrows in your heart, now or at any time during the service. And if you'd like a candle brought to you, please raise your hand. Please join me in the spirit of prayer and meditation. Great mystery of life within us, among us, and around us, connecting us all together in interdependence. We come today offering ourselves to the unfolding of the great cosmic explosion, comforted with gratitude for the knowledge that there is power in our collective attention and intentions. And we need that comfort because reality can sometimes feel tragic and we can feel powerless in it. May we not turn away from the painful pangs in our hearts so that our yearnings may become fuel. May our heartache remind us that not only do we care, but we are in each other's care. Because though reality can be tragic, there is hope in action and in stripping away that which doesn't serve us to make space for a heart cracked open. Let us hold one another in community. Together we are greater than the sum of our parts, and we need each other. And now, I invite you to make space for the sounds of our inner knowings and engage in the spiritual practice of silence for 2 minutes. I'll watch the clock. Ashe, Amen, and blessed be. As we sing our response, our young people, preschool through 8th grade, are invited to head to their faith formation time with their adult leaders. The sung response is 391, Voice Still and Small.
As we say in our covenant each Sunday, service is our law. UCE is called by our mission, values, and principles to to contribute to our community, to form accountable partnerships, and to express gratitude through giving. Today's offering will be shared with Deborah's Place, whose mission is to open doors of opportunity for women who are homeless in Chicago. You may text to give, mail in a check, put cash in the collection bowls, or give from our website. If you write a check, please indicate in the memo line if your check is for shared offering for some other giving. Ellie Fedderson won the opportunity to select a piece for Gregory to play in last year's Serendipity fundraiser. She selected Satie's Nocian, number 1, for today's offertory because she wanted to branch out from her love of Chopin. She finds the piece to be haunting with melancholy undertones, though the scales in the middle seem hopeful. And of course, she knew Gregory would provide his magical touch on this classical piece. The ushers will now come forward to pass the collection bowls down the rows. Please give as generously as you are able, and may what you give bring you joy.
this house we come, bringing our boldest dreams, seeking here the inspiration to find the strength to make them be. To this house we come hoping to bury broken dreams, to be sustained through their pain and discover new ones amongst their tears. We come here lonely, isolated from meaningful human contact, searching for warmth and closeness and care, needing to grow beyond plateaus of the commonplace. We seek here challenges and commitments productive of greater wholeness and deeper meanings. We come intense and constructed, hoping for encouragement to shed our pretenses to be ourselves. Filled with despair and self-doubt, we seek affirmations prodding us to say yes to ourselves and to life. Somehow, always putting happiness ahead of ourselves, we enter this place trusting that what happens here will enable us to make and to accept a little bit of it now, today. Strange place, this house. Here we cry, sing, laugh, hurt, dance, touch, survive, celebrate, grow, search, doubt, hope, rejoice, pray, trust, care, learn, think, wonder, be, become. Yes, this morning, to this house we come. It is such a joy to be here with you today. Thank you for having me for my very first sermon as your ministerial intern. Thank you. This has been such a warm, welcoming community, and I'm overwhelmed by that warmth and that welcome and that support. Thank you. Today, I want to do a deep dive into our identities. How do we come into them? How do they evolve? And how do we decide on them, if we get to? Sometimes it's situational. We're born into a family situation. We find ourselves in a professional situation, and we rise to the occasion. I'd like to invite you into the question, how much of these identities of our own making, and how much are they from external or cultural pressures? It's likely a mixture of both, right? Taking the ways that we interact with the world, assigning our own meaning-making or self-understanding to it. And we may have a lot invested in these roles, and after performing in them long enough, our ideas about ourselves can become enmeshed in these identities. Maybe an older sibling takes on the role of wise helper, or maybe it's a role you play in your relationship. Are you the adventurous one or the calm one? Maybe it's a sense of being healthy and independent and self-sufficient. Or maybe we identify with a career so much that it becomes part of our identity. So I'm curious about the roles that you all have in your lives, and I'm sure you have multiple roles with many labels. Author and therapist Martha Copy says, I think of a label as something you choose for yourself to give other people a shorthand to make assumptions about you that you can tolerate. Yeah. So do you consider yourself a caretaker, an independent person, a partner, a spouse, a leader of some kind? I want to invite you to think about what you get out of these roles. Maybe it's a sense of purpose, a sense of pride, a set of instructions on how to interact with other people in the world. Now, as a way of introducing myself as your new ministerial intern, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story. Before going into seminary, you may have heard I was a scientist, a chemist. And from this vocation, I got a sense of purpose, a sense of pride. I felt like I was helping humanity through research and teaching and mentoring, safeguarding the public's health through analytical investigation. I was proud of my accomplishments, and it made me feel good about myself, and it also gave me a sense of purpose in the world. But at some point, that particular sense of purpose and pride wasn't enough. In fact, I found myself miserable. I was objectively good at my job. I enjoyed good relations with all my coworkers, but I found myself dreading going into work anyway. And it was confusing because I'd done what I thought I was supposed to do. I went into a STEM field. I worked really hard. I attained a certain amount of academic and professional success and financial stability, but I was miserable anyway. And there were some things I saw, not from everyone and not in every place, but I found I could no longer tolerate some of these things that I saw. Posturing and individualism, perfectionism, prioritizing product over people and relationships. And later in seminary, I would learn that these are all vestiges of white supremacy culture, their inheritance burdens. But I didn't have that vocabulary, I didn't have those words at that time. I just knew that it didn't feel right and that I needed something different. So I'd like to invite you to think about a difficult transition in your life, maybe something you're in now or something from your past. Perhaps, like me, it's a job or a professional situation that isn't quite working out the way you'd hoped. Perhaps you're thinking about your future, where you're going to live. Are you going to follow family or kids? Or are you going to stay independent as long as you can, or move into a facility perhaps? Or maybe it's a relationship dynamic that's no longer bringing out the best in both of you. Is there some role you're playing that has a higher cost than you may really be comfortable with, even though it's familiar to you? A place where you're no longer able to show up how you like. So I found I could make myself do my job. I could make myself go in every day and perform the work, but there was a cost. And at some point, the energy that it took to do that, it just took too much of a toll on me and then on my family. I could see it in the stress that I had and in the stress of my kids and the way I was showing up in my most cherished relationships. But leaving a successful career meant changing a large part of my own internalized identity that I had put years of my life and honestly quite a bit of my ego into. It also meant financial instability and a loss of status, at least in some circles. My favorite definition of ego comes from some Buddhist thought, which is ego is that which resists what is. Ego likes to hold on to illusions of control and permanence, to favorable ideas of who we are, but it's not always grounded. I mean, ego has a place, it does. I think of mine as like a teenager, and I listen to her, and she has a voice, and she gets a seat on the bus, but she doesn't get to drive. And I'm grateful for the ways that my ego has helped me achieve some of the goals that I set out for myself. But it's not robust enough to be in charge, and ego has to take a back seat to greater knowing, fidelity to the data. I do want to acknowledge that a career change may not be feasible in all situations. I want to name the privilege of being able to do that. I may be getting help from student loans, but I've also had a lot of help from loved ones and support. And that's just not always possible for all people in all situations. And I also want to say, I'm exceedingly grateful for the scientists for whom this is your chosen vocation. Thank you for doing that meticulous, necessary work from my heart. I appreciate what you do. And don't let reviewer 2 get you down. That peer review process can be brutal. But I'm sharing with you a little bit about my own transition from science, because when someone you know makes a seemingly out there life decision, it can hold up a mirror to your own life. And changing careers meant changing my identity, not just in how I relate to the world, but in how I fundamentally saw myself. This quote from Pema Chodron's "When Things Fall Apart" captures that shift for me. Only to the extent that we expose ourselves over and over to annihilation can that which is indestructible be found in us. Only to the extent that we expose ourselves over and over to annihilation can that which is indestructible be found in us. It takes humility to be annihilated, and sometimes it's willing, but sometimes it's not. Either way, it's a courageous step into the unknown, or perhaps a sort of a free fall, not knowing what the landing will look like. It can take a lot to change our minds. It took me over a decade to make this choice because, to be honest, I knew right after I got my PhD that this was what I actually wanted to do. But I fell into the pit of the sunk cost fallacy. Please would you humor me for a moment, and just by show of hands, let me know if you're familiar with the sunk cost fallacy. All right, we got a few. Yeah. For those not familiar, it's an economic phenomenon. It just means not wanting to abandon a project just because we've already invested in it, even when it becomes clear that abandoning the project would be beneficial overall. And we hate the idea of having wasted our time, our efforts, our money, whatever it is. And sometimes the prospect of starting over is just daunting, and it can prevent us from shifting. So we work hard at something to prove that it would have all have been worth it if we could just complete the project or see the relationship through, if we could somehow show that the efforts were founded. And to make matters harder, we can be rewarded by society if the path is one that comes pre-approved by it. But it takes not just humility, but a certain amount of radical surrender to be able to give up a thing we've put ourselves into. It can feel like failure, heartbreak, annihilation, career change or job loss, divorce, a loss of independence, and for our trans siblings, a radical overhaul of who we thought we were and a loss of cisgender privilege. And maybe it's a loss on a bigger scale, a change in your company perhaps, or dare I say, a change in the sense of who your country is, thinking ahead to November. It gives us a sense of how little control we really have, of how transient everything really is. Only to the extent that we expose ourselves over and over to annihilation can that which is indestructible in us be found. Once we strip away these ideas about ourselves, what is left? What is that indestructible part? It's a putting down of our armor. It's a surrender. It's an intimacy with fear. And if we let it, it can make space for an opening of the heart. I posit that the indestructible parts of us are the truest parts, the parts that accept what is. That still small voice, or as beloved Howard Thurman called it, the sound of the genuine. What does your genuine voice tell you? Mine tells me that we are so much more than these identities that we hold on to, that we are life's longing for itself. Mine tell me that we are all in relationship, that everything is connected to everything else, and so how we move in the world matters. And we need each other because we're greater than the sum of our parts. And how we do the work is in many ways more important than the products we produce. And that whatever happens next with our health, with our relationships, with our country, we're in this together, and we're stronger together. Especially if we can show up with our hearts cracked open. My prayer for you this morning is that you find space to listen to your still small voice, the sound of the genuine. Ashe, Amen. Assalamu alaikum, shalom, blessed be.
As we extinguish the chalice, please join in saying the words on the screen by Reverend Elizabeth Sal Jones. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Please rise in body or spirit and join in singing our closing hymn, number 1017.
Two quotes. From The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, "You will never be able to escape from your heart, so it is better to listen to what it has to say." And from Howard Thurman, "Don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive, and go do that. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive."